Y'shua lucidly stated that his redemptive mission was limited to Yahweh's mandate. So the premise of the question, "What would Jesus do?" is entirely wrong. The rest of Yeshua's mission aside, he was a teacher of Torah, a rabbi. Doesn't logic dictate that teachers should be judged solely by their teachings? The correct premise is not to speculate, "What would Jesus do?" This would be guesswork and must be dismissed. The correct premise is, "What did Rabbi Y'shua teach?" On this premise we may proceed. Often an aggressor hides behind the plea that the followers of Y'shua, including me, love our enemies. Granted, if the person were truly and only our personal enemy, we should have no problems with showing that person brotherly love. However, the same leniency should not and cannot be extended to an enemy of Yahweh and his Messiah, Y'shua. Ancient Greek employed two words for enemy, each with a different meaning, and no less than 4 words for love. Again, each differing in meaning. The semantics of the Greek words used for enemy and love are certainly at odds with the vague, generalized translations found in English Bibles. Y'shua taught that a believer is to have agape, translated into our unexpressive English language as love, only phrenecthrus, which corresponds with the Latin inimicus, and applied to a personal or private enemy. Agape means to love in a moral sense, including charity, compassion, respect, and mercy. It is frequently used interchangeably with philo, meaning brotherly love. Y'shua did not command his followers to have agape for a polemius, which corresponds with the Latin hostis, and applied to a public, non-personal enemy. For dealing with the emergence of a polemius, Y'shua issued the command to obtain weaponry. Furthermore, he gave the instruction that it is better for a man to have a millstone tied around his neck and be drowned in the sea, rather than be permitted to cause his followers to sin. Contextually, love your enemy is not applicable to anyone outside of the Israelite faith and nation. Y'shua never said to do this universally, stating that he had come only for the lost sheep of Israel. He preached to Israelites only, spoke this command to Israelites only, and was merely pointing out his favorite command from Yahweh, which comes from Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18, reading, "Take no revenge, and cherish no grudge against your fellow countrymen. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. I'm the Lord." To those of us with some theological schooling, no agenda and no denominational bias, Y'shua's message of love by enemy is clearly intended to elaborate on the meaning and context of Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18, and to rebuke a non-scriptural, Pharisaic teaching that it is permissible to hate our enemies regardless of their religious and national identity. The Torah contains no such instruction to hate. Y'shua reminds the members of his Israelite audience that they have a responsibility to love their neighbor, even if that neighbor is a personal enemy, providing that their act of wrong is minor and non-violent. We are to embrace all members of the Israelite nation and faith, and we are not to bring lawsuits against believers. Again, provided the grievance is minor and personal in nature. Saul repeats the prohibition in 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Y'shua repeats the Torah's command to love even an enemy who is a fellow Israelite immediately after giving an entire sermon aimed at combating the non-scriptural myths and practices prevalent in his day, Matthew chapter 5 providing the complete sermon. Moreover, Y'shua takes the opportunity to rebuke the misuse of an eye for an eye retribution, given that this rebuke is contained within the same sermon expounding on the importance of Israelite brotherhood and keeping the Torah, which includes the right for a magistrate to impose a literal eye-for-eye punishment. Clearly it is not intended as an attack on an eye for an eye in the legal system, but rather as a renunciation of a flippant, tit-for-tat mentality among Israelites, such a mentality being a direct contravention of Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. He even closes the sermon by drawing a comparison between the behavior of the non-believing compatriots and pagans, and what should be the behavior of God-fearing Israelites. Aggressors make the sophomoric error of failing to comprehend the wealth of contextual information contained in the sermon, missing the point completely. But what about turning the other cheek? The command comes in the same passage and carries the same context. Yeshua lived and taught in a culture which viewed striking someone deemed to be of a lower class with the back of the hand as an assertion of authority and dominance. Few insults could have been more personal. If the persecuted person turned the other cheek, the discipliner was faced with a dilemma. The left hand was used for unclean purposes, so a backhand strike on the opposite cheek with the left hand would not have been performed. The other alternatives were to slap with the open palm of the right hand or to punch, but neither of these would have been performed as they were perceived to be a challenge between equals, a statement of rivalry. Thus, by turning the other cheek, the persecuted was, in effect, demanding equality. It is in no way an attack on the God-given right to the legitimate use of violence. Yeshua certainly didn't turn the other cheek to the enemies of Yahweh. He attacked them verbally and physically, and made it clear that his return will be as a warrior king ruling with a rod of iron, and dashing the nations to pieces. There is nothing at all contained in any of the teachings of Rabbi Y'shua which would forbid a believer from verbally or physically attacking an aggressor. It is justifiable. If the aggressor is violent and neither part nor party to the Israelite faith and nation, he or she is, potentially, toast. I've been Elijah, and you've been welcome.